Pick up the dumbbells, put on your leotard, ladies, and get those muscles pumping, because it's time for another retro wrestling workout with this week's edition of Union Smack. I am, of course, the Maniac Matt tenant, and once again without the sunny to my skip as we make our next stop on the In Your House Highway with installment number 7, Good Friends, Better Enemies. And don't worry, if you're at all lost or confused about what this In Your House would be called, Vince McMahon would remind you about 50 times during the 2 hours. And I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, we're only on number 7 and I already feel like I've been on the treadmill for a year doing these. You don't realise how much they take out of you until you start watching them back to back. Anyway, you can catch me, as always, on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant. You can find Travis over at The Habiki TMD. Unionsmack.bigcartel.com for all your merchandise needs from all of Travis's shows. And of course Lulu.com, where you can purchase a copy of my book, The Undertaker: A Trip Down Death Valley. And of course my second book, NXT UK Year 1, will be with us in the next few weeks. Let's get straight into it, because you're all busy people and you've all got lives to lead. In Your House 7, Good Friends, Better Enemies. April the 28th, 1996, from the Omaha Civic Auditorium in Omaha, Nebraska. This event was fresh off of WrestleMania 12, and of course WrestleMania 12 was where Shawn Michaels defeated Bret Hart to become the WWF Champion in extra time of a 60-minute match. Extra time. 60 minutes was not enough for these two, who did very, very little and mostly repetitive moves. Maddening, isn't it? Now, I say that I've just basically flushed that match down the toilet, but it was always a polarising match, and I've seen a tweet about it. I think it was last week, asking people to weigh in with their opinions on the WrestleMania 12 main event. Now, some people think it's an amazing match. Some people think it was boring. I know Travis is one of those people. I don't believe he liked it at all. We'll have to ask him when he does return. I'm down the middle, okay? I have fond memories of it from my childhood. I remember it being announced on... Maybe it was on Superstars I saw it announced. I remember it was a Saturday. I was watching WWF, so it would possibly have been Superstars on a Saturday morning. And it was announced there. I think it was probably announced on Raw before, but I hadn't seen that yet because obviously at 9 years old, I didn't stay up at stupid hours to watch Raw. Well, not always. And I remember it being announced and I was so hyped for it. Like, they're going to actually wrestle for 60 minutes and then I'd go and play football in the park, and it was a special occasion. Bret, Shawn, 60 minutes for the title. So I have fond memories of it from my childhood. Nostalgia-wise, it's up there with the greats, but watching it back, which I haven't done for years, I think I said that last week, there is a huge element of repetitiveness about it. And obviously following that match, Bret Hart took an extended break from the WWF after years on the road to reinvent his character and just give himself a bit of a rest, really. So we were left with Shawn Michaels as champion. The Shawn Michaels Express rolled along, whether people wanted it to or not. And as we'll see during this review, it left a bitter taste in the mouth of the majority of the people. The free-for-all match on In Your House 7, Mark Moreau defeated the 1-2-3 Kid via disqualification. How, why, I hear you ask? Keep listening, we will get into that just a bit later on, because that will serve as a huge part of In Your House 8 next week. So you want to be up on it all. You don't want to be the kid sitting in the back of class who doesn't know what we're talking about, so do stick around. This In Your House begins with another really good video package for the main event. I don't think I've hated the video package yet on In Your House. I'm sure I will as we get further and further into the Attitude Era, etc. But this one, again, really well done. The main storyline coming into In Your House 7, obviously the Diesel heel turn on Shawn Michaels. It captures Diesel's path of destruction from him losing the WWF Championship at Survivor Series to the present day. And when I say the present day, I mean April the 28th, 1996. It then switches focus to WWF Champion Shawn Michaels, who, it is said, that the glass is half empty after capturing the gold because of the betrayal of his best friend. It tries to pull on the heartstrings, and it does pretty fair job, I'm going to say, but it is Shawn Michaels. How sorry can you feel for him? We're shown Diesel turning on Shawn, laying him out with a steel chair, and the voiceover guy tells us that this will be the most emotional match of Shawn Michaels' career. Bless him. It then is followed by brand new graphics for In Your House. Gone is the logo trying to get into an empty house up a ladder through the upstairs window. And it is replaced by a warplane dropping the logo onto the map like a bomb. It is a very, very well done open. And it really gets you in the mood, ladies. Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler are on commentary as usual. And it's astounding, I was thinking this when I was watching the event. And we put in the work, ladies and gentlemen, so you don't have to, don't forget. Vince McMahon got as far into his commentary career, well into 1997, as he did without realising how utterly dreadful he was. Now, before I get, emails and, cancel culture, you don't know what you're talking about. He wasn't always terrible. I'll give him his credit. Some matches and some occasions, the boyhood dream has come true, etc., etc. Very good indeed. But for the majority, for me, he was utterly dreadful on commentary. And it was baffling that he stayed there with Jerry Lawler, because you had Jim Ross in the company from 1993, and yet you shunned him to, I think it was WWF Radio, Survivor Series 1993, and then a backstage interviewer, and he was rarely, Jim Ross, allowed on commentary. But, Vince McMahon pays the wages, so he can do whatever he likes. And he did. The first match out of the gate was meant to be the British Bulldog versus Jake the Snake Roberts, which in any other era would have been a cracking match. However, this was a British Bulldog who picked and chose when he was going to perform well, and a 1996 Jake Roberts who was so far into the alcohol and drug addiction well that not only could he not see any daylight above, but he couldn't function without some type of narcotic inside him. This was the first time we have seen Jake on an In Your House, so the first time we've reviewed him. And I think it's probably the first time we've reviewed 1996 Jake Roberts on Union Smack at all. I mean, I'd have to go back and check. We've had nearly 100 episodes, but none come to mind. He returned to the company at the 1996 Royal Rumble in a much worse condition than when he left in the early 90s. He just wasn't the same Jake we knew or loved at all. The ring psychology was sort of still there, but he was noticeably older, he was noticeably slower, he was noticeably fatter, to the point where they even made him put on a jacket to wrestle because he was hideously out of shape. To be fair to him, though, he still did get sort of the same, crowd reactions, the same reception. It was just never really the same for him in the WWF. Now, to set the scene for this match, we're taken back 1 week to a live event in Germany. I didn't get the town. It looked like Beirut, the way it was spelt, but it obviously wasn't. To Jake Roberts versus Owen Hart. After a DDT, Davey Boy runs in, beats up Jake, and then after the match, Jake puts the snake on Davey Boy, who we're then told is deathly afraid of reptiles. In the ring, Jim Cornette, Owen Hart and Clarence Mason accompany the British Bulldog to the ring, and Owen is dressed for action, like properly dressed for action. And despite not being booked on the card, so we already knew what's coming. Clarence Mason presents the referee with a legal document that we soon learn says Roberts is not legally allowed the snake at ringside during the match. After a Jake backstage promo, he brings the snake to the ring, unleashes it on Jim Cornette, who then passes out in a wonderful moment. Like, Jim Cornette should be praised for some of the stuff he did in WWF. I don't care whether you don't like him now, or you hate him, or you think he's this or think he's that. Some of the stuff he did as a manager, absolutely amazing. He drops the tennis racket, badminton racket, whatever it is, whichever sport the racket's for, he drops it. And you don't see it again, but do keep it in mind because it will come into play later on. The referee shows Jake the legal document. Jake rips it up in defiance, but the ref orders him to take the snake back to the locker room. And then he comes back out with Ahmed Johnson, who looks just as slithery as the snake, the amount of baby oil and water and sweat on him. But Johnson has his right hand heavily taped. Now this is from a arm wrestling competition he had with the British Bulldog a few weeks earlier. And it ended in chaos, of course it did. And the British Bulldog rammed his hand into the table and broke his thumb. So now the match becomes more about Ahmed Johnson and the British Bulldog than it does about the British Bulldog and Jake the Snake, which makes the original recap pointless. But, the effort's there, let's just say that. Now, this match is all over the place to begin with. Jake and Owen begin, Owen and Davey tag in and out. When Ahmed gets in, Davey tags Owen and refuses to get back in because he wants no part of Johnson. And it's like this for a good portion of the bout. Ahmed overpowers Owen. There is a nice couple of moments where Jake goes for his DDT, but Owen escapes, and even this is followed by more quick tags, which really holds up the flow and stops the match from getting out of first gear. Davey Boy gets brave when Ahmed is down, and he and Owen take turns, taking cheap shots at Ahmed Johnson. But of course, he comes back, uses his power to beat them off. Ahmed Johnson beats off Owen Hart and Davey Boy Smith. Welcome to In Your House, ladies and gentlemen. What's distracting, I will say, and this is prevalent throughout the entire night, not just for this match. The cameras keep cutting, and when it cuts to one specific camera on I think it's the entrance side, the aisle side, it hasn't been cleaned. Like, the lens is clearly foggy and dreamlike, and they don't bother to rectify this at all. Kevin Dunn is sat back there in the production truck. He can clearly see on his screen that the camera needs either replacing or cleaning, and yet for 2 hours he does nothing about it. By the main event, by the time we get to Shawn Michaels versus Diesel in the main event, this camera is still as dirty and as foggy as it is in the first match. What were they doing? Ugh. Jake plays the fool guy here. He takes a beating by the heels and he looks a state by the end, like a right proper state. The end comes when the Bulldog finds Jim Cornette's racket, and while the referee is distracted, batters Jake's leg and ankle with it. And then he applies a modified leg vice for the submission victory. This took forever to get going, and actually lasted too long for me. I think it was almost 14 minutes. Way too long when you consider how limited the baby faces were. Jake didn't have it anymore. Ahmed Johnson arguably never had it at all. And this was left to the Bulldog and Owen to carry. And God bless their souls, but they didn't really carry it very well at all. The British Bulldog and Jake Roberts would battle in singles competition the next night on Raw, and that ended in a no contest. I just wish this had been 6 years before, because 1990 or even 1989 Jake Roberts versus British Bulldog in his prime would have been absolutely tremendous. But as it is, you don't always get what you want in wrestling. We know that. Mark Moreau and the 123 Kid are shown on the WWF Superstar line, and both men are really annoyed as we're told that Hunter Hearst Helmsley interfered in their free-for-all match. We would see more of this rivalry later on, but the one thing you notice here more than Mark Moreau and 123 Kid is a very sexy Sable just sat behind Mark Moreau, giving her best sultry, come here, lover, eyes. I won't do that voice again. Oh dear, I've just seen what's up next. Oh, WWF Intercontinental Championship match. If you can call it that. Goldust champion versus the Ultimate Warrior. I won't be doing that again either. The Ultimate Warrior had, of course, returned to the company at WrestleMania 12 in that infamous squash of Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And the Intercontinental Championship had been the focus of some controversy in the month before in your house also. On the April the 15th Raw, Goldust was forced to vacate the gold after his title defence against Savio Vega ended in a no contest. Now, usually the champion would retain if that was the case. If the championship match went to a non-finish, the champion retains. But Goldust was forced to vacate the title. And then 1 week later on Raw, April 22nd, the pair fought again for the vacant championship and Goldust won it back. What the fuck is the point? What's the point of vacating the title that the champion's only going to win back the next week anyway? Maddening stuff. Like, absolutely maddening stuff. And it's no wonder that WCW is starting to look more attractive at this point. Just, oh dear. As for this match, what the fuck was this? And this is where I wish Travis was here, because, dear God, this was the biggest farce I think I've ever seen. It didn't need to be booked, right? Now you just listen to this. First, we were taken back to the free-for-all, where we saw Goldust blow some gold pieces into the face of the Ultimate Warrior. Now, unfortunately, during the scuffle, Dustin Rhodes actually injured his knee in the segment and couldn't actually wrestle. So, obviously, plans had to be changed on the spot. This begged the question, why not replace it with something else? The writing was on the wall, okay, when the Ultimate Warrior made his entrance, and it took a literal age. It must have been 3 minutes as he just posed and walked around the ring. And in fact, I'll tell you how long it went. This went so long that his entrance music went into parts we'd never heard before. That is how long he was just pissing about in the ring. Goldust, heavily taped knee by the way, attempts a sneak attack while the Ultimate Warrior was distracted with his new bodyguard, played by Mike Halleck, better known to wrestling fans as Mantor. It doesn't work, Warrior catches him. Goldust then runs away, hobbles away up the aisle with Marlena in tow and disappears through the curtain for a little bit. At this point, bear in mind the bell's already gone, the Ultimate Warrior grabs Marlena's director's chair, puts it in the ring, and then grabs the cigar she dropped and starts smoking it in the ring. Zero wrestling. They've not even touched each other by this point, okay? Goldust comes back out, berates the audience on the microphone to waste a few more seconds, and states that if they don't shut up, he will kiss each and every one of them. The camera pans back to a sweating Ultimate Warrior, okay, and it's worth mentioning here that it must have been a really hot night in Omaha, because absolutely everyone who came out to wrestle looked so hot and sweaty before the matches began, it was ridiculous. Even Goldust, he was sweating through the paint, you could visibly see it. So Warrior gives Marlena's cigar back to her, he holds the robe open for Goldust, who puts it on, and sits in the director's chair and starts smoking Marlena's cigarette again. And then Goldust orders the Ultimate Warrior to kiss his hand, but the Warrior stubs out the cigar on Goldust's hand and clotheslines him. Goldust bails, he's counted out to retain the championship, and this is 8 fucking minutes, and we got literally one move. Absolutely disgusting. If you knew Dustin Rhodes was injured going into this, substitute him with someone else like you did with Dean Douglas at WrestleMania 5. Or just scrap the match, actually. Scrap it, because it's crap. Not even a match. Doesn't even deserve the designation match. Now, I understand that you wanted to get Warrior on pay-per-view after paying him a small fortune to return, but fuck me with a fish fork. Don't just have him smoke and sit in the ring for 8 minutes. I mean, look, we got some action after the match. The bodyguard, Mike Halleck, got in. He was clotheslined, shoulder blocked, slammed by the Warrior, and then the Warrior put on Goldust wig and bodyguard's hat. This was absolutely disgusting. Why put it on? Why not have the Ultimate Warrior versus someone else? Just, I can't get over to you how bad and how much of a waste of time this was. If you're watching in your house 7, just fast forward this. You have missed absolutely nothing. Apart from the opportunity to cause yourself a hernia when you see how fucking bad it actually is. We're taken to Doc Hendricks backstage, who stood watching Camp Cornette attempt to gain access to Shawn Michaels' locker room. Though we will go more into this feud in our In Your House 8 Beware of Dog review next week, this would lead into Davey accusing Shawn of hitting on his wife Diana. Of course he would. And then a lengthy WWF Championship program for the British Bulldog against Shawn Michaels during the spring/summer of 1996. Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler talk about how Goldust retained the Intercontinental Championship. It's unbelievable that this was the topic of conversation and not your upcoming WWF Championship storyline. Just maddening. Vader versus Razor Ramon was up next, and don't panic, it's not as bad as you'd originally think. We're shown a recap of Vader breaking Yokozuna's leg with several Vader bombs 3 weeks ago on WWF Superstars. Do keep that in mind, it will come into play at the end of this match. The bout begins with Vader overpowering Razor Ramon and throwing him over the top rope. And the power moves, they're really the crux, or whatever you call it, of this match. In fact, it probably relies on them a little too much, maybe. Vader dominates with punches, headbutts, and you actually do believe that Razor is in danger from the outset, so credit to both men for that. Now, for some maddening reason, Scott Hall tries to Razor's edge, but is dumped to the outside before he actually wears Vader down with corner punches and clotheslines him over the top rope. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen. This is where logic starts to fall apart. And it's at this point in the match you begin to feel like Vader is probably selling a little too much for Scott Hall. And let's not forget, Scott Hall, who should be putting Vader over as the next big monster. Again, Razor... it's priceless. Honestly, Razor Ramon kicks out of the Vader bomb. Like, what the actual fuck? Scott Hall was on his way out of the WWF at this point. This would be his last WWF pay-per-view appearance before he joined WCW. So why are you allowing him to kick out of a move which is going to be used down the line to build, a story around the WWF Championship? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. There was no way this was going to help Scott Hall in the long run because he wasn't going to be there. And what makes it even worse is that seconds later, he's back up and fighting like nothing has happened. He even get a suplex on Vader. A fucking suplex. What are you doing? Vader goes to the second rope, but Razor catches him with a power slam. Of course he does. He catches him with a power slam as he comes off, and he hits a second rope bulldog. The same second rope bulldog which he pinned Sid with In Your House 4. After Vader cuts Hall off with a charge, he goes to the Vader bomb again, but Hall pops up and attempts to raise his edge. But thanks to the injured ribs, which Vader worked on earlier, he can't complete it, and he just drops him. He drops Vader like a sack of shit, and you can see it on Leon White's face when he gets up. He's like, the fuck are you doing? Vader then goes for a moonsault, but Hall is up again. Of course, Razor Ramon just doesn't die in this match. Don't matter about putting over a monster. Just keep getting up from all his moves. So Hall's up again. He drops him with an electric chair. And by now it's getting ridiculous. Quite honestly. For as good as the match was, it's getting absolutely ridiculous. Why is Scott Hall... And I'm getting angry about it. I can feel it. And this was, 24 years ago. But it doesn't matter. Fuck it. Why is Scott Hall allowed so much offence in this match when in a few weeks he won't even be there at all? Worse, why is he allowed to counter and kick out of Vader's biggest moves? You're trying to build the next main event star here, the man who's going to challenge Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship at SummerSlam, and you're making him look like a moron. Razor, I'm getting bored of that name now, attempts to raise his edge, but Vader backdrops him and then just sits on him for the victory. This makes no sense. It's a very good match with some solid ring psychology, but it's 15 minutes long, and when you book a match that's that long, it necessitates that Razor has to fight back, thus making Vader look weak. Now, like I said, the sole plan was for Vader to challenge Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam, so it would have been a much better story. Okay, this is how I'd have booked Vader in 1996, around this time, and tied it in with the Shawn Michaels main event at SummerSlam and the Razor Ramon and Diesel leaving the WWF. So, you have Vader destroy Razor Ramon at In Your House. And he then destroys Diesel either on the next In Your House or on television if you can't convince them to stay that long. And then takes credit for putting them out of the company altogether. That would have given the SummerSlam match history. It would have given it drama. The fact that Vader put out Shawn Michaels' real life friends, and now he's gonna do the same to Shawn, but worse, and he's gonna take his title, and he's gonna rub the fact in his face that he's just a pretty boy who can't get the job done against actual men. Just think how much better that would have looked. But the fact that Vader looked like he struggled against a stale character who was leaving in a few weeks anyway, just didn't pass him off as a danger to the WWF Championship at all. And make no mistake about it, by April 1996, Razor Ramon was stale as fuck. The babyface turn had come in 93. He'd been babyface for 3 years. The character was done in my book. After the match, Doc Hendricks catches Jim Cornette and Vader and tells them that In Your House 8, Vader will face Yokozuna, as made official by WWF President Gorilla Monsoon. So we've got that to look forward to next week, ladies and gentlemen. The Undertaker is on the WWF Superstar line backstage. I mean, I say that. He was stood behind the phone operator while Paul Bearer talked. So if you phone the Superstar line hoping to speak to the Undertaker, then I'd have asked for a refund if I were you. The WWF store is up next. Of course it is. And this week, we're flogging polo shirts for Shawn Michaels, The Ultimate Warrior, and The Undertaker. And if you buy one, you get a free hat which matches the shirt. I mean, in all fairness, I'd have worn the Undertaker shirt. It looked quite good with the logo and stuff on it. But the other two, the colours just didn't suit me. WWF Tag Team Championship match is up next. Yes, we have new Tag Team Champions. Because last week, the titles were still held up vacant. The Bodied Honours, the champions, defend against the Godwins. Now, on February the 15th, 1996, the Smoking Guns were forced to vacate the WWF Tag Team Championships when Billy Gunn suffered, I think it was might have been leg. No, I'm sure it was a neck injury. The titles were then put on the line in a tournament which came down to the Bodied Honours, Skip and Zip, and the Godwins at WrestleMania 12. Unfortunately, the WWF Tag Team Championships weren't deemed important enough to make the main card, and this was fought on the free-for-all. And it wasn't a bad match, if my memory serves me correctly. Jerry Lawler has the ball here berating Phineas Godwin on commentary, and the line of the night when he says, and I quote, "Sonny was 20 years old before she realised that cars had front seats." What a wonderful line that is, and most probably true. This couldn't have looked and felt more like a filler if it had tried. Honestly, it was the shortest match on the card, and from the layout to execution, it couldn't have looked less like anyone didn't care. Just, ugh. The saving grace of Chris Candido, Skip, versus Henry Godwin was quite good while it lasted, as was Skip's Hurricane Rana on Phineas Godwin. The Body Donners hit a nice slingshot suplex on Phineas, but that was it. That was the best this match got. Phineas, I need you to see this, ladies and gentlemen. So put yourself through this match. He tries a hog kick, okay, where you balance yourself on your hands and you kick your legs out the back and connect with whoever stood behind you. It looked like he tripped up, caught himself mid-fall, and then struggled to get back to a vertical base. It looked absolutely terrible. Chris Candido and Tom Pritchard did not know how to sell it or what to do, other than laugh, which thankfully they didn't. And just Phineas Godwin in 1996, my God. The end came when Sunny distracted Phineas with a signed photo of herself. Henry hit the slop drop on Skip, and with the referee too busy staring at Sunny's tits, Zip snuck in, took Skip's place, and caught Henry in a sloppy inside cradle for the win. Sloppy, I believe, is Sunny's specialty. Their WrestleMania free-for-all match was much better than this. I want you to watch this if you watch In Your House 7, just for that ridiculous hog kick by Phineas Godwin. But if you want to see a better match between these two, then go and watch the free-for-all on the WrestleMania 12. A video package airs for In Your House 8, Beware of Dog. Though it doesn't announce the title, it just says In Your House 8. It begins black and white, as if it's set in the 60s America, and then turns to highlights of WWF as it announces Vader versus Yokozuna, Mark Moreau versus Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Savio Vega versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, and a WWF Championship defense by Shawn Michaels. And just so it announces that, sort of ruins the main event. Because you know now that Diesel ain't winning. Doc Hendricks is backstage with Mark Moreau, who mumbles and whispers his way through his promo on Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Though it was mostly inaudible, you did hear him say that Hunter had stuck his silver spoon where it didn't belong. That was a nice line, I suppose. We finally see highlights of this free-for-all match, which has been built up throughout the entire In Your House event. Mark Moreau and 1-2-3 Kid. And this match, I will say, could have easily have taken the place of the Tag Team Championship match, or even better, the fucking Intercontinental Championship fiasco. I'm not even going to refer to it as a match, it annoys me that much. It could have taken either of their places. We'd have been much better off seeing it. Plus, it was leading to something bigger between Helmsley and Moreau for the next pay-per-view. The other matches led to nothing. Absolutely nothing whatsoever. Poor booking. Anyway, the long and short of it is, Helmsley in his suit, causes a disqualification. Him and Moreau fight a little bit, and then Helmsley gets the pedigree on Mark Moreau. Moreau wins by disqualification, as we have already said at the top of this show. We then get an advert that states the first 2,500 people to send in proof of their purchase of In Your House 7 would receive 5 minutes of free long-distance call. I mean, what the fuck can you do in 5 minutes? What can you do in 5 minutes, especially if she doesn't pick up the phone straight away? Ugh. We get a nice video package for the Shawn Michaels versus Diesel feud. It's another very well done piece, which sets the scene perfectly, and it retells their story from good friends to enemies. I wonder where they got that idea from. The video package goes all the way back to Shawn Michaels bringing Diesel in as his bodyguard, the pair's first split in 1994 when Shawn missed Sweet Chin Music once too often. And then from there, it took in Diesel's WWF Championship victory, and interestingly notes that being the champion And having to wrestle so many long and hard matches made him miserable, which is as good as the truth. It didn't make Kevin Nash very happy at all. While a year of setbacks saw Shawn rise to the top, it really does paint Kevin Nash here as a lazy bastard who wanted the fame and fortune but not the workload. Very well done. I mean, speak the truth, as they say. We see Shawn defeating Brett at WrestleMania, Diesel turning on Shawn Michaels, and then both men speaking on the free-for-all, in which Shawn says that their friendship is over and that he and the Clique will dance over Diesel, and Diesel says that he has something for Vince and the fans tonight. The main event, ladies and gentlemen, no holds barred match for the WWF Championship. New champion, Shawn Michaels versus Big Daddy Cool Diesel. The Diesel heel turn stemmed from him losing the WWF Championship to Bret Hart all the way back at Survivor Series 95. Now, we've chronicled that on the In Your House 5 review, and I think on In Your House 6 too, though I can't really remember. Like how he got slowly fed up and turned heel, began with costing The Undertaker the championship at the Royal Rumble, and then just spiraled out of control. As we go into the arena, Vince McMahon keeps shouting the name of this event, and if it's good, as if it's going to make us any more excited for the match. And it does get overwhelming. I lost count of how many times he said it during the entire night. Now, for some really weird reason, when Diesel's making his entrance, we keep seeing shots of Shawn Michaels getting his chest rubbed by Jose Lothario backstage. Yeah, because there's nothing I like more than an old man rubbing my hairy chest when I'm about to go into one of the biggest moments of my life. It's really soothing. It couldn't have painted Jose as a dirty old man more, and Shawn Michaels as the prissy, prima donna more had it tried. And maybe that's what fans didn't like. Maybe they saw that and thought, we're not having that. This wasn't the Shawn Michaels of last In Your House. Before the bout begins, Maurice Vachon, Mad Dog Maurice Vachon, is at ringside, and Vince tells us how his career was ended in an automobile accident and how he has a false leg. He couldn't have signposted what was to come any clearer had he taken off the leg himself and shoved it at the camera. Shawn Michaels is all business in this one. There's no dancing, there's no prancing, there's a good look of determination on his face from the beginning. He strips in the aisle, races to the ring. It serves the match well and gives it a really dramatic feeling. Both trade momentum. Shawn Michaels sends Diesel to the outside, hits a marvellous moonsault from the top rope to the arena floor, before he steals the boot of a ring announcer and levels Diesel from the top rope. Now, sadly, Jerry Lawler, legend of the ring, Jerry the King Lawler, who's been wrestling for decades, doesn't seem to know the rules of a no-holds-barred match, because he asks Vince McMahon if it's legal. Diesel uses his power to take advantage. He ragdolls Michaels. It splits the crowd. This is where the cheers for Diesel begin to creep in, and the cheers for Michaels, and they were all over him. 2 months ago, they were all over Shawn Michaels. They loved him. Now he's got the title. The novelty's not quite what we want or expect. Diesel takes off his wrist tape, and just as you think he's going to choke Shawn with it, he chokes the referee from behind and then steals his belt, which he whips Shawn Michaels with in a lovely segment. It doesn't stop there. It continues. He ties the belt round Shawn's throat like a noose and hangs him over the top rope. It's a wonderful sight to see. Not Shawn Michaels being choked out, but just how brutal this Diesel was. And then Diesel ties the belt to the rope so Shawn can't escape. From there, he fetches a steel chair and he batters the shit out of Shawn Michaels with it, when he's still tied to the rope by his neck. The tide turns when they're back inside. Shawn moves, the chair bounces off the top rope, hits Diesel in the head. Shawn goes to use it, but then Diesel hits a delicious low blow, and Shawn is forced to fight from behind once again. It's how it should have been. The underdog babyface challenger against the ruthless take no prisoners, I will kill you if I must to win this match heel. The story here, first class. Shawn's never say die attitude was inspiring. Diesel's powerbomb through the announce table looked brutal, especially after the monitors bounced up and landed on Shawn Michaels' stomach. It looked like it could have caused a hernia, or at least a ruptured a bowel or something. Diesel then takes the WWF Championship and poses with it in the ring. There's a lovely little touch here. Shawn's desperately trying to get up from the broken announce table, and Vince McMahon's there, stood over him, pleading with him to let it be over. It really gets you. If you're a lover of the Valiant Babyface comeback story, it will really get you, there. You can't see where I'm tapping, but I'm tapping my heart. There. It'll get you there. Shawn fires a fire extinguisher into Diesel's face. Punches, flying punch, kip up, all the usual stuff. And then he takes a chair, which has Jerry Lawler's headset and monitor attached to it, and nails Diesel with it full force. Audible support for Diesel now as the boos begin to rain in on Shawn. Shawn counters a jackknife powerbomb, hits his flying elbow from the top rope as the crowd, they're just on him now. They're raining down the boos. Diesel counters, switching music with a clothesline, goes to ringside, pulls Morris for Shawn over the railing, takes off his false leg, and Vince McMahon nearly has kittens on commentary. Shawn Michaels' low blow, which gets a thunderous, heel reaction from the crowd, steals the leg, nails Diesel, sweet chin music for the victory. Excellent main event, and the standard bearer for every big man versus small man match. And what a great way to, kick off Shawn's reign. They do this throughout, his entire reign as WWF champion. Just stack the deck against him with more powerful and dangerous opponents to get people behind him. Sadly, it didn't work. Shawn would lose the audience by the time Sid pinned him at WrestleMania. But they at least tried with Shawn. They didn't just give up on him. They really wanted you to love him. And like John Cena and Roman Reigns, who sort of followed in the same ilk as Shawn Michaels when they won the title, with the crowd turning on them, they just plugged away at it. And this was, of course, Kevin Nash's last WWF pay-per-view. Him and Scott Hall would be gone to WCW very, very shortly after, which was a shame. Because, the Diesel heel character was actually going somewhere. He'd never had a single heel run in WWF, just the heel run when he was Shawn Michaels' bodyguard. So, to see what this could have become would have been absolutely fascinating. A heel Diesel against Stone Cold Steve Austin. The dark matches following In Your House 7. Savio Vega defeated Stone Cold Steve Austin. Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeated Mark Moreau, so they gave that away to the live audience before the next event. And they gave him Mark Moreau twice in one night. And The Undertaker defeated Mankind. If we're being honest about this event, In Your House 7, it was mixed. A mixed card. The main event and Vader versus Razor Ramon are the matches you'll go to if you tune into this. But the entire rest of the event is just take it or leave it. If you can sit through matches that should have been better and unimportant bouts, then you might find, this might be a pleasant surprise for you. But the entire event was built around the main event anyway, and it didn't disappoint. It was a great, great match. This event for me gets a C, just because 3 of the 5 matches weren't up to scratch, and it included that utterly dreadful Goldust Ultimate Warrior 8 minutes, which was torture and just brought the entire thing down. So for me, it gets a C. It wasn't as good as In Your House 6, Rage in the Cage, but the main event was an absolute belter. Absolute belter. If this had been it, if it had just been a one match show, in just that one match being booked on the show, end, perfect. But yeah, C. Watch the main event. Watch Vader versus Razor Ramon, even though it'll make your blood boil, especially if you like me. And you can probably skip the rest of it. Definitely skip the Intercontinental title bullshit. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, once again for joining me for another In Your House review. We're getting there. We're thundering down the tracks. 8 next week. Beware of Dog. Bulldog, Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship. I'm very excited about that. I loved their matches together. They were always magic in the ring. Had so much chemistry. But until then, you can find me on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant. unionsmack.bigcartel.com for all of your merchandise needs from all of Travis's shows, and lulu.com, where you can buy my first book, The Undertaker, A Trip Down Death Valley, and NXT UK Year 1 coming in the next couple of weeks. And I forgot to say, don't forget to go follow Travis on Twitter at the Hibiki TMD. I appreciate your love, I appreciate your support, I appreciate you listening to me ramble on for 45 minutes. Have yourselves a good week. Wear a mask, stay indoors, do whatever you need to stay safe. But until we meet again, my friends, cheerio, mates.